Welcome to the Codename E9 podcast, episode 3. It's been 4 years since I last made a Codename E9 podcast. And so before I say anything, I want to apologize to S7EdJ. Because in my last podcast, episode 2, he commented, "I enjoy watching these. Make more in the future. I liked, by the way." To which I responded, "Thanks, I will." So, sorry, S7EdJ. I did not continue making these in the future until now, in the far future. So if you're still watching yet, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I just stopped making these. I think I don't know the exact reason why I stopped making the podcast, but I came back because I like to yap. So I just thought, I like talking about what I learned and something like that. So why not just start up a podcast again? And now it's not official podcast. It's not like an actual podcast that's like sponsored or anything. It's just a video where I talk about stuff for however long. But yeah, you're probably wondering what has been going on. What is happening? I think the last time I made a video was my quit video a year ago, which I didn't really talk about what is happening with me. I just talked about why I quit. So you guys haven't had an update in like a year or two or something like that. I didn't really talk about big updates or anything. I was like, oh, iPixel is trash. Oh, YouTube. So what has been going on with me? Well, for starters, I converted to Christianity around it might be 2 years now, because it was in 2023, but like the middle of 2023, like July, September, August, September, something like that. So yeah, I would, it could technically be 2 years now, I guess. But yeah, I'm a Christian now. I'm a Reformed Christian. I attend an Orthodox Presbyterian church. So my main focus with this podcast is going to be Christian studies and theology stuff, and maybe church history. But I'm kind of rusty on church history because I recently got into it. So yeah, and then I've recently gotten to welding too. So you might know my bio, my YouTube bio. I would have it said like, I don't want to go to college. I just want to be a YouTuber or something like that. Well, now I think I might be a welder. I might go to trade school. Might be a welder. So we'll talk about welding and all that stuff because I'm recently got a TIG welder. So we might talk about my TIG welding experiences. Stuff like that. So how have I become Christian? How did that happen? It's gonna be the main part of this podcast, my testimony and stuff like that. So, as I said, 2 years ago ish, it started. My conversion. It started earlier than that, though. Still 2 years, but like a few months earlier. I think in 8th grade, I started being convicted and stuff. I think it was from, I tried to act like cool or something like that. And one of the trends that I found cool was having Bible verses in your bio, in like a TikTok bio, Instagram bio, some bios, stuff like that. And so I searched on TikTok like Bible verses, something like that. It's because I thought I didn't have an access to a Bible or anything, so I was just TikTok, oh help me TikTok. And then I got a Bible verse, if you're wondering, but I also got a Christian TikTok for you page, which now looking back on it, very dangerous to have. For a really young Christian, you do not want to have a Christian TikTok for you page. So yeah, I started just scrolling through TikTok, and it was like Christian video after Christian video, and then I got convicted of that. I was like, dude, I gotta start reading the Bible more. I gotta start praying more. I gotta do all this stuff, dude. What if I don't make it? And stuff like that. It was a bad state. I'm not gonna lie, pretty bad state. But God used it for good. I think. I mean, He uses everything for good. Yeah, I would get like these TikTok videos where it'd be like, "Oh, I just received a vision from God. I had a dream that Jesus was coming back," and everyone was like, "Oh no!" And then I woke up in hell, and all the demons, and I believed it. I was like, "Dude, no way." Yep, it was pretty dangerous. Pretty dangerous time. But to God's glory, to God's grace, a particular group, particular channel on TikTok showed up on my For You page. And if you're one of my online friends and you're watching this, you probably know who. A channel called needgod.net appeared on my For You page. Now, I'm not going to go too into detail with needgod.net because I recently left the group and stuff like that. So I don't want to go into detail because they're all going to charge at me and stuff. But they appeared on my For You page. And, well, even before that, there was this one person, it was like an older person on my TikTok For You page that made a video about like the end time stuff and how do you get saved and stuff. She gave a good like idea of the gospel, like you just trust in Jesus. And I was like, oh, I guess that should. I wasn't 100% sure until needgod.net started appearing on my For You page. And needgod.net, the guy who runs needgod.net and does all the videos, his name is Ryan, and Ryan explains the gospel to me. And slowly over time, as I got more involved, I remember scrolling through just their videos and stuff. I became sure that that was the true gospel, and I trusted in Jesus, became Christian, and was a part of their group. I think I joined their Discord server like a couple of weeks after that, I think. Then I just became friends with a bunch of the people there. Still friends with most of them today. I was with needgod.net for like months. Like it wasn't a full year. It was like 8 months maybe. I broke off with them in the summer due to just disagreements and all that. I won't go into that because they're gonna charge me for it. I don't want to go back and forth and debate and stuff. So yeah, I recently became reformed. I wasn't. One good thing about Ryan and needgod.net is that they gave me a good direction for Calvinism, because they were kind of into like the whole tulip thing and Calvinism stuff, and it gave me a good direction. Like, oh, Calvinism, good. And then it wasn't until this summer when I was truly a Calvinist, and then later on, as I looked into covenant theology, I watched a couple videos, and then one of my friends, my Reformed Paedo-Baptist friend debated one of my Baptist friends and something like that. I don't know if he's actually Baptist or something else. I don't know. They gave me a good basis of what a covenant is and what happened and Old Testament stuff. But it wasn't until a couple videos later, I think it was Matthew Everhard's covenant theology video, it made perfect sense, you know? It was the Old Covenant, New Covenant, circumcision in the Old Covenant, baptism in the New Covenant. It's just a newness. The newness of the New Covenant is baptism. It's the newness of circumcision and all that. And yeah, I became Paedo-Baptist, and then got into the tulip stuff again, more in depth to it, and then I became Reformed, and then I joined the Presbyterian Church, Orthodox Presbyterian Church. Been in there for around like 4 months now, I think 5 months. It's amazing. It's I love it. So yeah, that's pretty a pretty long testimony, and like I say long because I usually shorten it down. I summarize it to people who are just like, oh, what's your testimony? So I kind of gave a long answer to this one for the podcast reasons and stuff. So yeah, Reformed theology is pretty cool. There's a lot of misrepresentation of it, you know, but once you get into like, I would recommend like Sproul or Matthew Everhard or something like that. Once you get into it, it makes more sense as you go into it, and then there's so many TikTok people, ortho bros, and something like that. They just misrepresent what Calvin taught, what everything taught, you know. So yeah, I really wanted to make this to go into TikTok stuff because TikTok is pretty dangerous. Now, like, there's a lot of like people on TikTok who are Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, and they're just it's confusing to me. And they scroll through TikTok and then they see, oh, it's a saint edit. Oh, Saint Augustine, Saint John Chrysostom. My gosh, Clement of Rome, and they like it, follow it, put in their favorites, and then they're posted. No, and then they get to Cliff. I think I usually butcher his last name. Cliff Ketchel, I think, or connect. Yeah, Ketchel or something like that. They go into one of his videos and they're like, "Oh, he's so Sigma. He's so cool." Like it, repost, add it to their favorites. It's just so different. Cliff is not Eastern. He is a Protestant. And then what's more confusing is that when a Protestant, like some actual like Protestant, like that's not Cliff, talk to him, and then the Eastern guys are like, "Oh, you Protestants, you changed the Bible." No, but Cliff is fine, right? Cliff is fine. It's very confusing. And I really don't like TikTok for that reason. It almost brainwashes people to being like, it's like the Orthodox people, and I call them ortho bros, and many people call them ortho bros. They just have like the definition I would put as an ortho bro is someone who just doesn't really know anything about the Orthodox Church, but still like is like, oh, so based, so Sigma. Wow, look at all these icons. So cool. Beards. And it's a confusing one. It's the same thing for Roman people, the Roman Catholic people. They some they see St. Augustine edit and they're like, oh, like repost, and then Cliff Ketchel, and then like, oh, and that's another thing. I'm glad Cliff is on TikTok, but I'm also a little bit nervous that Cliff is on TikTok because yes, Cliff is good for like, I guess, sola fide stuff and like faith alone, how we're saved and all that. I think he's good on that part, but then you get into more deeper stuff. And I don't know what exactly he says about other stuff. I just know what he says about hell, which I'm pretty sure he believes that it is a separation from God. And that's kind of it. There's no like torture, like there's no punishment. And I think his reason for that is that if God were to actually punish people, he would be evil or something. It's kind of confusing to me, honestly. But yeah, it's just his theology is not the great, it's not the greatest, not the best. It's like uh to the whole hell thing. It's not a separation. I mean, God's he punishes them, punishes the evildoers, the wicked. I mean, I don't know why it would be a separation. I'm pretty sure in Revelation. Yeah, it is in Revelation. Talks about Jesus is in the presence of the Lamb. Hell is in the presence of the Lamb. Not a good presence, but just punishment presence. Well, I say not good for the person in hell, because they're getting the just punishment they deserve. Yeah, it's Cliff is not the best person to listen to if you want to get more like deeper into theology stuff. Once you get the good idea of faith alone, sola fide, stuff like that, go for someone like Sproul or C. Sproul. He has a really good Reformed theology series on YouTube and a book that I have. He goes into like all the stuff that you need to really be Reformed and stuff like that, and have a good theology and stuff. Yeah. And then I would also recommend Matthew Everhard's Reformed View series on YouTube. This series is great. I've been taking notes of it like every Lord's Day, and it's a big help. I think it's a really big help because he explains it in such an easy way, and then he goes into Bible verses and Reformed quotes like on Calvin quotes and like Luther quotes and stuff like that, and then if you wanted to get to the early church side of things, you can go to Anthony Rogers or something like that. James White, I don't know. James White is a good help, not for maybe not for covenant theology, but maybe just like all the other aspects and stuff. Everyone likes James White, and everyone likes R.C. Sproul and Matthew Everhard and all that. So, yeah. And for those, for those who do not know that I've converted to Presbyterianism, and always thought I was a part of NeedGod.net, and I never left and all that. I don't know who else I thought would. I think maybe some people don't know, or something like that. But yeah, I switched Presbyterianism and stuff just because I didn't understand the covenants. I think that was a big help. Understanding the covenants and covenant theology was a big help, turning me from Calvinist, Baptist, and I wasn't even fully Calvinist, by the way. When I was in Uganda, I would say, "Oh, I affirm tulip. I'm reformed." But then someone would come up and say, "Oh, what does repent mean?" And I was like, "Oh, a change of mind." And now looking back at it, it's definitely not a change of mind. That would go against the T in tulip, which is total depravity. We are totally deprived of sin. We can't change our mind. And we can't change our mind on sin and turn to God, because we can't unless God intervenes. And yeah, I would just be like that. And then I was also a new covenant theology person. I didn't even know I was a new covenant theology person. I just would do that. Someone ask me, "Oh, why do you read the New Testament first?" And then I'll be like, "Oh, because the Old Testament is just history now. It just has no meaning whatsoever." And yikes! Now is yikes. The Old Testament, you get so much. You get so much of the Old Testament. You get like all the prophecies of Jesus. You get covenants which point to Jesus. And then you had the Abrahamic covenant, which one of the ultimate reasons why I'm a Presbyterian now. I could go on for covenant theology, by the way. I love covenant theology. It's one of my favorite topics. But yeah, once the new covenant theology was abolished, in me, and I was like, doesn't make sense anymore. I looked at the old covenants, and in the old covenant, circumcision was given as a covenant sign to Abraham. And I'll just explain what the old covenant stuff, Abrahamic covenant stuff is. A covenant, sort of agreement, but it's more than just an agreement. It's someone explained. I forgot who explained it like this. It might be John Frame. I don't know. It was a greater king and a lesser king, and then the greater king proclaimed who he was, and then he gave the lesser king rules to follow and punishments to break that rules. And it's called stipulations and something else I forgot. And then the lesser king has to follow and abide by those rules, and if he doesn't, he gets punished for them and all that. And then there's usually a sign as like a remembrance, or like a sign signifying something greater than what it is. And so in the Abrahamic covenant, God gave Abraham the promise of his children would be as numerous as the stars. And Abraham believed the covenant. And then God gave him the sign of the covenant, which was circumcision, which was signifying, it was actually more than signifying, but it mainly signified the covenant. And it also signified Christ, and that he would be cut off from the world. And once someone receives circumcision, they are administered into the covenant. They are administered into Israel. And so, yeah, and the interesting about the circumcision was that it was given to the children, the infants. Isaac was circumcised at 8 days old. You can read about that in Acts and even Genesis and all that stuff. He was circumcised at 8 days old, which was a big, big, big for me. Because as someone who is credo Baptist, which is believer's baptism, adult baptism, I was like, dude, there was infant circumcision in the Old Testament. And now knowing that the Old Covenant is not abolished, I mean, Jesus said it was not abolished, but fulfilled. It was crazy. And, now that circumcision was given to infants, the Old Testament and the New Testament and the New Covenant, circumcision was fulfilled in Christ. And now, since circumcision looked forward to Christ, we look back to Christ in baptism, which in the Old Testament, circumcision was given to households, given to infants, and you see the exact same thing in the New Testament. So many Baptists and so many credo Baptists, they say, oh, there's nowhere in Scripture where a child was baptized. To which I say yes. But just like there's no specific thing for the Trinity or saying that, oh, there's the triune God, the idea is there. You have a household baptism in the New Testament. The person who believed is, instead of him getting baptized, it was his household getting baptized, which in the Old Testament was still there. In the Old Testament, when someone would enter into Israel, his whole household was circumcised. And so it's still there in the New Testament. And even in Peter and Acts, he restates the promise given to Abraham. To you, to your children, all that. And the New Testament, it's there. Infants are a part of the church still. They haven't been kicked out since the Old Testament. So just like an infant will be circumcised in the Old Testament, an infant will be baptized in the New Testament, because it's still households. It's still like the Old Testament with circumcision. It's just with baptism now. And obviously there's more other stuff, but that was kind of the gist of you can go way deeper into that. But that's kind of the basic summary of what paedobaptism is and what we believe, stuff like that. So yeah, I've been Presbyterian for a while now. Reformed for a while now too. There's a difference, I don't know. And yeah, it's fun. It's fun learning theology stuff. It's fun learning all these things with Christianity and all that. I love it. I love learning about theology, covenant theology stuff. And I feel like I've been more into covenant theology than I should be, with learning other stuff. But it's interesting. It's very interesting. And yeah, that's kind of good summary of Baptist position. You can a really good sermon. There's a really good sermon by Patrick Hines over households, what a household is, and Abrahamic covenant, and Old Testament, New Testament stuff, and how it's similar. It's the same. It's like there's no difference in the children of the Old Testament and Israel and the children of the New. And yeah, it's same thing. Uh, Also with my Reformed studies, Christianity studies, I've become a presuppositional apologist. I'm not good at it. I wouldn't say I'm an actual like I'm actually like a pro at it. Like I've mastered it. It takes a long time to master precept, but uh, I view it as the only good method to defend the faith. And it's not just atheist stuff. Like I remember when I first dove into precept, I just thought it was a way to make an atheist believe in God, which not true. You can use precept. It's worldviews. It's dealing with worldviews, which are just everything. Like you can use precept on a Muslim. You can use precept on a Buddhist. You can use precept on a Hindu. You can even use precept with people in Christianity. Like you can use precept on Roman Catholics and Eastern Orthodox. You get the gist. But yeah, I recently got into precept over the summer, same time that I became reformed and stuff. Precept's been pretty helpful for the most part, even though I haven't learned that much of it, and I still want to learn. But you have to get into theology first before you get into apologetics. Otherwise, how do you know what to defend? You know, how are you gonna defend the faith if you don't know the faith? So I got into theology, and I've now been obsessed with theology stuff. And then I got into church history. I think at the same time when school started, and I got into history class, started liking history even. But you know, going through all these videos and reading textbooks and all that is kind of boring. And then I got into church history, which was really fun. Church history is fun because you get to learn about what happens before this time period. You know, like who were the great theologians, who were the great early church fathers. What happened with how did we get here today? How did we go from, Christ instituting the church to all these denominations and all this stuff? And that is all answered in church history. I haven't gotten too far into the church history yet. I've only gotten to the early church part, which I'd have to go through a whole another video with that because it's fun. Church history is fun, but I've only gotten to little bit. I think I've gotten up to the Apostolic Fathers, like the end of the Apostolic Fathers, and like into the actual like early church fathers, which I think end of the second century, or no, not the end of maybe the third. I don't know. Like I don't know, 100 to 300 AD, something like that. I haven't gotten, so yeah, I haven't gotten that far, but I think if I break it up into little pieces, like I learned about the early church for a little while, and then I move on to Middle Ages, and then I move on to the Reformation, and I move on to modern-ish times, like maybe Puritan stuff, English history, and then American stuff, and then yeah, we get into the 20th century with when stuff actually started happening, like OPC founded in 20th century and all that, and Westminster Theological Seminary and all that. So yeah, I've, hopefully later I should know about the early church pretty well. Maybe not. I say very well. I'm probably not gonna know that much. Like later down, like a few months. I don't know. I've been reading through Nick Needham's church history book, and James White church history lectures, which if you're Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox, you're like, oh no, James White church history lectures. Oh, what is he getting taught? And it's pretty good. I mean, Clement of Rome, you know, pretty it's pretty obvious sola fide and stuff like that. So yeah, church history is very fun. I still love history. It just kind of got boring for me, or maybe not boring, but just tiresome after after all the BC stuff, like Rome, and you get into like the first century AD. It just kind of got tired, and that is until I picked up the early church stuff, which yeah, it's pretty fascinating. And then when you learn about the Roman history and all that, you get a crossover sometimes with Rome, and then you get the crossover with the early church history. Like for example, Julius Caesar Augustus. The he was the son of Julius Caesar, and he's kind of the one who did a lot of stuff around Jesus' birth time. With I think he was the one who gave Herod orders, which made Jesus move to Nazareth and all that. And then yeah, you just get some crossovers with Roman history and the early church stuff, and then you get, you know, everyone should know this in the person who ruled over Judea, the governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate. Everyone should know who Pontius Pilate is. He's the one who gave the orders to crucify Jesus. So, and then that's I think the biggest mix with Roman history and church history, and then you get into the Holy Roman Empire area and all that. So it's fun seeing crossovers. It's very fun. So yeah, that's my main conversions recently, over from a Baptist Calvin, kind of a Baptist Calvinist theology to actual Reformed theology and church history stuff. So what else is going on? And I mentioned welding earlier, which welding is so fun. So I've recently gotten to welding last year, and I've loved welding ever since. Getting to it's just kind of, it's not really relaxing, but it's fun. It's just fun. It's like seeing your welds after you're finished. It's just satisfying. It's fun. It's fun making stuff out of metal and stuff like that. Well, even though I don't really like projects that much, it's just kind of fun. I've recently gotten to TIG welding, which is fun. TIG welding is fun, even though I haven't tried it yet. I just know it's gonna be fun. It might be hard. I think it might be one of the hardest welding methods ever. But honestly, I think it's better than stick. Now, in welding, there's stick welding, which is like with a stick electrode with flux, which is like makes a gas shield thing. Then there's MIG, which doesn't require a stick. It actually has a wire that feeds and stuff, and it already has gas and all that. And with stick, it produces something called slag, which is like a hard crust thing on the outside of the metal. You have to chip off. It's a pain. With MIG, you don't have to do that. MIG, you're free to do whatever you want. And then you have TIG, which is kind of better. It's more clean than MIG. You don't have slag, you don't have dust particles or anything. You just have a clean weld. And then you have filler rod and stuff. I'll have to get into welding much later into podcasts and stuff like that. And it's super fun. I recently got a TIG welder. I'm still figuring out stuff. I still need filler rod. I still need a chair because I want to sit when I'm welding stuff. And I still need my desk, my welding desk that's coming in soon. And yeah, I think I still need maybe other stuff too. But that's kind of the main stuff. But yeah, it's fun. Welding is super fun. If you haven't welded before, I recommend you just try it out. I don't know how you would try it out. For me, it was in school. We have a welding class. But if you haven't done welding, you need to try it out. It's super fun. If you don't like it, that's kind of on you. But yeah, welding is really cool too. My welding class, it's filled with guys that I've talked to and friends with and stuff. And so it's fun welding with the guys. So yeah, I plan, Lord willing, getting a job in the welding industry, preferably at Kennedy Space Center, NASA stuff. I would like to weld, looking at the rockets, looking at NASA, whatever NASA makes, but maybe SpaceX as well, because I think SpaceX would have better opportunities with that and stuff. That's kind of me in the welding world. I'd probably have to go into welding stuff later in the podcast, and might have a whole podcast on welding. I don't know. I'll have to get my TIG welder to just work for welding stuff, and then I'll have to talk about that. Talk about the experience of TIG welding, and that could be a whole podcast. But for now, I wanted to just say I'm back. I am a Christian now, and I like welding now. And oh, I forgot to say this in the beginning. I brought back my old profile picture just to do this because, it just fit the E9 podcast stuff. So I brought back the old profile picture, and we're back doing podcast stuff. It's fun, and I'm doing this for fun. I'm not trying to get this into some whole YouTube thing. I don't know. So, yeah. I like doing the podcast now. I just want to do it again. I think back when I did my actual Codename E9 podcast, I would just have my phone. It would just be my not AirPods. I forgot. I don't even know what you call them now. Just earbuds, the Apple earbud things that would have the wires, and I would hook it up to my phone or iPad or something, whatever I had back then. Put it down on some bed or something that would cover the screen. It would be black, and then I would just hit record and then talk through the earbud microphone, Apple microphone thing. And it would only last for 20 minutes because I was afraid of the iPhone storage running out or something. But now I have a PC, which I can do whatever I want now, kind of. There's still storage, but it's way more than the iPhone. So yeah, I can make double the time the podcast, and I could do other stuff too. It's not going to just be like a blank picture. I'm going to have the audio visualizer stuff too. It's all going to be better than how I originally made it. And back then I was 12, I think. So a lot of changes. Now I'm 16, so lots of changes. So yeah, I think we might end it here. Because I've gone over everything. I've gone over my Christian stuff and welding stuff, what's happening with me. So now, you should be caught up with what's happening to me. And yeah, I hope you like this podcast, and I hope that I could do more in the future, Lord willing. So, yeah, that's gonna be all for this podcast. And maybe follow maybe for just more if I choose to upload more, which I might make another one because I have a lot to talk about. So, yeah, we're gonna end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed this one and hope to see more. I had a fun making this. So yeah, peace, guys. See you in the next podcast, Lord willing.